warlord general named Sun Tzu wrote a book called The Art of War, and to this day that's the most authoritative treatise on the art of war that's ever been written. It's still followed by the left to this day. And he made several points in the book, and one of the points he makes, one of the key points is, he says, the lowest form of the art of war is to confront your enemy directly on a battlefield. And that the highest form of the art of war is to defeat your enemy through subversion, that your enemy might not even know who's attacking him or a country. To undermine everything of value in the enemy camp. Their money, their morals, their educational system, their political system, their defense, on and on. So education and morals, the attack on our children, is what's happening, intentionally to undermine those pillars of our society and bring us down. It's not by accident. If it was by stupidity, if the decisions that are made were the result of stupidity, occasionally they make a mistake in our favor. They don't. Consistency is not the hallmark of stupidity, it's the hallmark of an agenda. They're intentionally trying to corrupt the morals of our children, dumb down our children, rewrite history, deny our children access to the facts of the principles that we're founded on. No doubt in that curriculum, there's no mention of our rights coming from God. There's no mention of our Bill of Rights, or that government is to be limited to just protecting our God-given rights, and that's all. Okay. So having said that, say a little bit about the things that I stand for as a candidate. I've been a political activist for 30 years. The word political activist has a broad meaning, which could take in the left. What I am is a constitutional activist. I've been fighting for 30 years to get state government, local government officials simply to honor their oath to the Constitution. Simple. Things have progressed to the point in America that I see that the best way to influence our legislators is to replace them with constitutionalists. Therein myself. I teach Constitution courses. We recently graduated 150 constitutionalists in Cumberland, Gloucester, and Salem counties, many of them from the Greenwich Tea Party group. And they're a liberal politician's worst nightmare. To have 150 that understand the principles that we're founded on, understand the Constitution, understand the issues. They're not going to get away with anything anymore. We need to do that here in Cape May County. It was a free course, 12-week course. The only expense was $30 for the workbook. And you come out of that course and you have a real solid understanding of our Judeo-Christian heritage that we're founded upon and what the Constitution says. What I would do as a constitutional activist when elected, first off, I would sign on to the series of bills that Assemblywoman Allison McCose has already introduced dealing with the problem of illegal immigration in New Jersey. Okay? Illegal immigration costs New Jersey taxpayers $2.1 billion annually. Not to mention the crime, the increase in crime, incarceration, and so on. Other things I would do, I would lead the effort to assert our 10th Amendment rights as a state. The 10th Amendment says that all powers not specifically delegated by the people to the federal government is reserved to the states and to the people respectively. Meaning Obamacare, Cap and Trade, Food Modernization Act, these unconstitutional federal bills that are being forced on us. Our state legislators have the authority under the 10th Amendment to send them back and say, no, these are rejected by the state of New Jersey as exceeding the authority delegated by the people of New Jersey under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. They are nullified. Other states are already doing this. The Real ID Act, okay, that was being pushed on us as a means of tracking American citizens. That was stopped simply by 32 states passing resolutions that no, in our state, this is not going to take effect. When it reached that number, then the federal government just backed off. Didn't even go to the Supreme Court. Montana has introduced legislation as far as all these gun laws coming upon us. Okay? Montana passed a resolution nullifying these federal gun laws and saying, no, in the state of Montana, we're going to manufacture weapons for sale and use within the state of Montana. And if any federal agents from the ATF come and try to enforce federal regulations in Montana, they'll be arrested. jail, charged with felonies. That's the stand the states have to take. They have to stand up to the federal government. There's much that they could do, that congressmen can do in the federal government, that I could go on with for a long time, but I'm running for a state office. There's a lot that state legislators can do. Other thing I would do is, in the New Jersey Constitution, Article 8, Section 2, Paragraph 3A, speaks about any bonds, any debt that's going to be incurred over and above 1% has to go to the voters to be approved before that debt can be incurred and put on our children and our grandchildren. Okay? We are well over $100 billion in unconstitutional debt. That's unconstitutional in the sense that the voters didn't get a chance to vote on it, didn't get a chance to consider it. It was just passed. Passed, and this burden put on our children, and basically indenturing our children and our grandchildren, pledging the future labor of our children and grandchildren as collateral for this debt. And what was the debt used for? It was used for the pet projects, for legislators to buy their re-election, on the freedom of our children and grandchildren. Okay? So I would introduce legislation to repudiate New Jersey's unconstitutional debt. That debt that was incurred in violation of Article 8, Section 2, Paragraph 3A, those bonds which state that they are not backed by the full faith and credit of the people of the state of New Jersey need to be repudiated. That would take a massive debt burden off the taxpayers of New Jersey. At the same time, there's a need, I'd say it's basically it's the 3 R's: repeal, reduce, and roll back the unconstitutional regulatory burdens that have been put on small businesses. They're choking small businesses. Right? Our state flag is the emblem of liberty and the emblem of prosperity. And the reason for that is because the founders knew that prosperity follows liberty as surely as wet streets follow rain. That's why America became such a light on a hill, simply because government was limited to protecting our God-given rights, and that's all. That's the essence of freedom. And as long as we have freedom, as long as we have liberty, prosperity follows, because there's no greater motivation for people to produce than to know that they're going to be able to keep the fruits of their labor for themselves, their children, their grandchildren, their local community. That's what made us so great. Not because we're so much smarter or because we have so much greater natural resources. We had freedom. That's what we had, freedom. And that's what's slipping away. So repeal, reduce, and roll back the unconstitutional regulatory burdens that are choking small businesses. Then we'll start to get jobs. Entrepreneurs create jobs. As long as entrepreneurs can breathe again, they can prosper, they can expand, they can hire, new businesses can open. That's the way to bring back prosperity to New Jersey. Another issue. Just as they're endeavoring to undermine the morals of our children, the educational system that's teaching our children, there's another attack that's sweeping across the country. Article 5 of the United States Constitution provides for 2 ways that the Constitution can be changed. This is talking about the United States Constitution now. 2 ways to change the Constitution. One is through the amendment process, which is implemented by Congress. That's been done 27 times. You have the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, and another 17 amendments, or 27 amendments. Okay, that's the way that we've always been changed, that the Constitution has always been changed, that approach. But there's a second approach that's in Article 5. And what that is that if any time 2/3 of the state legislatures pass resolutions calling for a constitutional convention to propose amendments, then the United States Constitution will go into convention. Now, there's only been one constitutional convention in the history of America. It was in 1787 when the Articles of Confederation went into convention to be amended. But the thing to understand is that the delegates to a constitutional convention have total authority. Sovereignty is vested in them. There's no force on earth with more authority than the delegates to a constitutional convention. In 1787, those delegates decided to ignore the limitations put on them to just amend the Articles of Confederation. They decided to scrap the Articles altogether and give us an entirely new document. By the grace of God, these were men who had just fought off the British at great personal sacrifice. They gave us our present Constitution. The Articles of Confederation required that any changes go back to the states for ratification, and that ratification has to be unanimous. They even changed the ratification process. It didn't go back to the states, it went to special ratifying committees in the states, and then it didn't have to be unanimous. Likewise, now here we are 200 years later, and there's quotations by James Madison, the father of the Constitution, Chief Justice Warren Burger of the Supreme Court, warning of the extreme danger of ever having a second constitutional convention. Well, so here we are 200 years later. You can only imagine if an Article 5 Constitutional Convention were triggered, it would be a special interest, major media, lobbyist, multinational corporation, leftist, free-for-all, a shark-feeding frenzy on a Bill of Rights, on a Constitution. Our Constitution will be shredded. We're only a few states away from the 34 required to trigger a Constitutional Convention now. There was, up until, I guess about 3 weeks ago it was, there were bills pending, both in the New Jersey Senate and in the New Jersey Assembly, calling for an Article 5 Constitutional Convention. I contacted Senator Doherty's office. He had introduced one of the bills. Now, Doherty's one of the good guys. I spoke to his chief of staff for about an hour, explaining the implications of this. He finally understood. They decided, okay, they're going to amend the bill and take that part out. Okay? They didn't want to withdraw the bill altogether because it kind of lose face to do that. So they're going to amend the bill and take that part out. In the meantime, there's an ex-senator, state senator, Dick LaRosa, who's been pushing for an Article 5 Constitutional Convention on the idea of term limits. Right? Term limits sounds good, but an Article 5 Constitutional Convention would subject the United States Constitution to being scrapped. Okay? He was giving a speech in North Jersey that I went to, a Tea Party group in North Jersey, and I was able to refute everything, just from the audience, able to refute everything that he was saying, to the point that word got back to Senator Doherty's office as to what happened to Dick LaRosa when his information he was putting out was refuted. They decided to pull the bill altogether. Another bill, the one in the Assembly, calling for a Constitutional Convention, I wrote a rebuttal to their bill, taking it piece by piece, breaking it down. They had even quoted Hamilton, taking a line out of our Federalist Paper number 45, out of the middle of it, and using that to try to promote the bill. And I rebutted the whole bill, and they withdrew the bill. So I'm already active, fighting to stop that legislation which threatens America, and at the same time, on top of that legislation, like Alison McCose's bills on illegal immigration, when I hit the Assembly floor, I'm going to hit it running. I'm not going there to get along. I'm going there to fight for America like I've been doing for the past 30 years. But I need your help, and we've got to win the primary. If we don't win the primary, we're done. You have to send constitutionalists there, just to switch from Democrat with Republicans that still don't get the principles. Here's a typical thing. Typical candidate will say, oh, well, I have a lot of business experience. Well, vote for me because I have business experience. Well, that'd be great. The business experience is useful. The problem is government is not business. It's not a business. The purpose of any business is what? The goal of any business is to expand. Well, the essence of freedom is the proper limitation of government. So guys get into government, they have the best of intentions, but they don't have a clue of the principles of freedom, and they get in there with the idea of doing business, and it expands. And therein we lose our freedom.
Thank you, Peter.